Hey, what's up, ladies? It's your boy, Mr. Locario, the bad boy of the dating game. What's good? So, this audio is titled Five Things You're Doing to Scare Men Off. So, I wanted to do this audio for you ladies because, I want to let you know that there's certain things you're doing that is gonna kind of make guys not want to keep seeing you, or you go on a date and they won't call you back. And I got a lot of emails from ladies that tell me, hey, I was on this date with this dude and I really liked him, but he hasn't called me back. Or I was with this guy and he stopped seeing me, and like, what's going on? So I really want to let you ladies know there are certain things that you're doing that is scaring men off, and I'm going to tell you like how to stop it and what you should do. And but I want you guys to really take heed to what I'm about to say. Listen to this audio many times as you need to. Take notes if you need to, but make sure you keep your ears open when I'm talking about these things. Now, some of these things that I'm going to say is going to sound like, like what? This sucks, and that sounds so messed up, but this is the truth. And I love to give you ladies the truth. I just love it. I love it. I love it. So I'm going to name five things that you're doing to scare men off. And this is in no particular order of importance, but I just want you to, understand what's going on when I'm describing these things. Now, first thing, number one, first thing that is scaring men off is if you have a bad attitude. If you have a bad attitude. Now, you're probably saying, what is a bad attitude? What do you mean? I don't have a bad attitude, right? And some women already know that they have a bad attitude. They know this. They're probably, some of you ladies are probably listening to like, yeah, I know I can be kind of crazy sometimes, or I be, act like this sometimes, but sometimes a woman might have a bad attitude and might not know that she has a bad attitude. But if you have a bad attitude, then that is something that is going to scare men off. And an example of, having a bad attitude is basically anything that you're doing when you're interacting with a guy that is not positive, that is not bringing positive energy. So sometimes, you ladies might be in a bad mood sometimes. Let's say you're dating a guy and it's like your third date or whatever. And let's say you were on your way to the date and something came up. You got a phone call from, your job or your friend or something. You got into an argument with your friend on the phone, and you're just in a bad mood. And then you go meet him with that bad mood or that bad attitude, and it's like you're bringing that bad energy to that date. And that type of thing, is going to scare him off, even though you don't want to be in that mood, but it's just you're feeling it and you're like, and it's going on. That energy that you're bringing is going to make the guy say, well, yeah, she seemed cool, but last time I went out with her, she just had an attitude problem and she was just seemed like she was pissed off. And guys don't like that. Guys don't like that. We can understand, like, the thing is that in that situation, you could say something to the effect of, oh, I'm sorry, I'm feeling this way, but, something had happened and I apologize. That's cool because that's showing a more of a better attitude. Even though you're upset and you have that bad attitude, you're showing and displaying, a good attitude to let them know, like, hey, look, I'm really not like this. I'm usually not like this, and I apologize. And it's going in the direction of having a good attitude to a great attitude. And basically, you just having a good attitude is just you being positive throughout the time when you're with the guy, and you're showing that. You're showing the best attributes of you. Like, I went on a date with this girl one time, and soon as the first date, we met online, but then we met up in the city. Soon as I see this girl, smiles, big hug, just very energetic, and it just made, I was just like, yes. So, ladies, what I would say to you is, when it comes to your attitude, smile more, have just be a very positive in your presence. Don't complain, don't bitch, don't moan about anything. You understand? Like, I understand things are going to come up, feelings are going to come up in certain situations, but when you're out dating these guys, especially if it's the first, second, third date or whatever, do not display a bad attitude at all, because that is going to scare the guy off. Because this is the thing. I'm going to tell you a little secret. A lot of men, in the back of their minds, sort of expect you to have a bad attitude. They sort of expect you to have an attitude that is going to, they're like, oh man, like, this girl, they're just hoping that you don't have a bad attitude, but they kind of expect you to have a bad attitude. And you'll notice this sometimes where, notice if you're ever nice to a guy, you're just really nice to a guy. You're just being nice. You ever been nice to a guy, and what he did was interpret your niceness as you like coming on to him or sort of being into him, and then he tries to, get with you, and you're just like, yo, I was just trying to be nice. The reason why a lot of times guys will get with you or think that's the okay to get with you because you're being nice is because they interpret the niceness to mean that you like them, because they always encounter women who have attitude problems or who have a bad attitude. And those women who have a bad attitude usually aren't giving them the time of day, or usually displaying that they're not into them. So they're used to a lot of women they're dealing with having a certain attitude. So let's say you're meeting a guy on a blind date or something, or an online date, or for the first time. Not saying that he all the way expects you to act like a bitch, but he's still it's still out that he's kind of seeing it as, well, let me see how her attitude is. He doesn't still just expect you to have a great attitude when you meet him, because his experience with women in most cases aren't women with good attitudes, because a lot of times he'll talk to like 10 or 15 girls, and about 12 of those girls will give him an attitude, give him a bad attitude, give him that negative energy. So guys kind of are used to that thing. So if you're coming in with a great attitude and displaying that great attitude, it's going to make him want to see you more, want to stay with you more. So you have to make sure that you have a great attitude when you're dealing with the guy. Having a bad attitude is going to scare men off. So make sure that your attitude is great. All right? So the first one is having a bad attitude is going to scare men off. Now, the second thing, and a lot of women do this, and I'm going to go deep into this because a lot of women don't even know that they're doing this or realize that they're doing this. Now, number two thing that's going to scare men off is if you're not responding to his calls. Now, I'm gonna break this down deeper than you might even think I'm going to break it down. So what I mean by this is when you're not responding to his calls, you have one situation where a guy's calling you, and you're not responding to his calls because you're just not into him. So you're probably saying to yourself, well, some guys, I just don't respond to their calls because I'm not into them, right? But sometimes you are into a guy and he calls you, and let's say you miss the call, or you just don't call him back because you're trying to play hard to get, because you think you got to play hard to get to make it more interesting or make it more into you, whatever. So he calls you and you don't respond to it, but you like this guy. Now what happens is that some guys, they'll call you once, maybe twice, and if they don't hear from you, they will stop calling, because they interpret your the fact that you're not responding to them as to mean that you are not into them. You understand? But what I notice a lot of women do is a lot of women will say, well, and I've heard this on many occasions. A lot of women will say, well, if a guy really likes me, shouldn't he just continue to call me until I pick up? Or shouldn't he just keep calling me until so if he really wanted me, he would come and get me. He would come and call me. But see, the thing is that you not responding to his calls is scaring him off because he thinks that you not responding means you don't like him. Because in his mind, he's saying if she liked me, if she was into me, she would have responded to my call. She would have texted me back. She would have called me back. But since you didn't, and since you were sitting there waiting for him to call you, he moves on. He goes and finds another woman. And then you're sitting there wondering, like, damn, what happened? I thought I like this guy. Why didn't he call me back? And the reason why he didn't call you back is because you didn't call him back. You didn't go in and return his call. You understand? So if you're not responding to his calls, that is going to say to him you don't like him, and you don't want to give that. You don't want to have that message sent out that you don't like him. You don't want that to be in the air of him even thinking that you're not into him like that. Because the thing is, guys, what they do is they will talk to a number of different women, and the ones who are the most responsive to them are the ones who are going to get more of the attention. See, a lot of women still think that this whole like thing where guys want to chase and want this whole challenge. And I've read actually books for women telling women not to call guys back and make them call you 3 or 4 times and all this other stuff. You got to understand we're in a new society. It's fast paced. You got Facebook, Twitter, texting, Skype, whatever. There's so many different ways and easy ways to get in contact with people that, guys aren't, playing that game anymore, especially when guys get older. If you're, in your late 20s, early 30s and you're dating guys, in their 30s or whatever, most of these guys aren't doing that type of stuff, trying to call you 10 times or whatever and waiting for you. That's like stuff you do in high school. You understand? So when you're getting older, when these guys call you, they are expecting you to respond to them. They're not going to keep calling you if they call you once or twice and you just don't respond. They're going to assume that you're not interested and they're going to move on. It's going to scare them off. They're going to think, well, this girl's not interested. And the thing is that a guy doesn't want to keep calling and look like, he's stalking you or look like he's sweating you. You understand? So guys will just stop calling you just off of that. Guys will stop contacting you just off the fact that they don't want to look like they're bugging you. So they'll say, well, hey, I guess she's not into me. I don't want to look like a jerk and keep sweating her and bugging her. So I'm just going to stop calling. And the reason why they stop calling is because you are not responding to their calls. And the reason why you're not responding to their calls is because you expect the guy to keep calling you, even though you're not responding. You understand? You have to take the initiative to like really, let this guy know that you're trying to make something happen. You have to respond to him. You have to show that interest. Like I had a friend who, she would tell me that there would be guys who would call her, or there'd be guys she meets and she gives the guy the number, and he would call her, and he would leave a message and say, hey, let's get together on Friday, right? So she would say to herself, well, damn, I'm not free on Friday, so I can't see him. So but the thing is, she wouldn't call him to let him know that. She just knew she wasn't free, so she just didn't pay it any attention because she was like, well, I'm not free, I can't see the guy, right? So instead of calling him, she just, didn't call him, and he didn't know she wasn't free. All he knew was that she didn't call him back. And then what happened was she kind of was wondering why this guy didn't call her back, because that was the only call he gave her. And she was like, I really like this guy. I couldn't see him that Friday, but I really wanted him to call me back, and I wanted to see him. So the thing was, it was her responsibility to return that call and say, hey, I'm not free Friday. But on top of that, say, listen, I'm not free on Friday, but maybe Sunday night or Saturday night, we can get together. So you have to be responsive to these guys to let them know you're interested. You got to respond to their texts, to their calls, and let them know what's up. So you not responding to his calls and expecting him to keep calling you, that's not going to work. That is not going to work. There are guys, that will like you and really like you and just stop calling you because you're not responding to their calls. Some guys will only call once and not respond if you don't call them back. Some guys might do it, 2 times, and usually if a guy calls you 2 or 3 times and you don't respond to him, it's not going to happen. And there are some women who do that where the guy will call 2 or 3 times and the woman will not respond, and then, she wonders why it's not going to happen. It falls off. You're scaring him off. Because he doesn't want to feel that rejection. He's like, okay, well, I'm just going to stop while I'm ahead, and I'm going to keep it moving. All right, so number 2 is, not responding to his calls is going to scare the guys off. Now, number 3 is talking about the future with him. Talking about the future with him. So that's going to scare the man off if you're talking about having a future with him. Now, let me explain this. If you are in a committed relationship and you've been with the guy for a while, like a year or 2, whatever, talking about the future is not a bad thing. It's not going to scare him off if you've already been in a relationship. I'm talking about the future with him on the second date. Do you understand what I'm saying? Talking about having kids, talking about him meeting your parents, talking about all the things you guys are going to do when you go on vacation, all these futuristic stuff that's supposed to happen with you two when you haven't established anything yet. Don't do that. Don't even hint at it. Don't joke about it. Just don't. Just leave it out the conversation. And I know a lot of women who do these things where they will talk about the future with a guy. They really like a guy, and they will imply that this is going to happen longer than any of you agreed it to happen, and that kind of scares off the guy because it's like you're looking like you just want to like lock him down right now, and he's probably out there dating and figuring stuff out himself, and he doesn't really. He's not thinking about it that way. So now he's like, oh my God, this woman wants to get married already. I got to stop calling her. So you're going to scare men off. So you have to make sure that you're not, bringing up any future plans on your second dates, on your first dates, on your third date. Like, stop it. And another thing, that I know a lot of women say, you'll say something like, where is this going? Where is this relationship going? Now, in certain cases, let's say if you've been with a guy for about like 6 months to a year and he hasn't officially, said you guys are together, and then, at that time, it's a decent time to say something like that. If you want to bring that up. But again, not on the second or third date or after you guys had sex, because sometimes you have sex, on the third or fourth date or whatever, and then you want to bring up the where's this going talk. So you're talking about future stuff, and the guy's just kind of like, whoa, like, relax. You know what I'm saying? See, that scares men off when you are trying to tie it down, at that point. The thing is, what you have to do is you have to understand if you want a relationship or if you want something to develop, you have to make it happen organically. So it has to be you and him, dating, hanging out, getting together, continuously seeing each other. Because if a guy is into you, he's going to want to keep seeing you. And then at that point where it's been, a while, not just the third or fourth date, and when it's been a while, a couple of months to a year, then you could say, okay, yeah, so where's this going? Are we like together? Like, okay, you know what I'm saying? Then you can talk about that and talk about future stuff if you want. You understand, at that point, because it's been a while and the guy, he won't necessarily be scared off at that point, because at that point he can understand that it's that type of conversation is coming. You understand what I'm saying? He can understand that can, you know, be something that can be had at that point. You understand? So you have to wait till that goes down, but do not talk about the future with him at the beginning. So number 3 is talking about the future with the guy is going to scare him off. Now, number 4. Fourth thing that's going to scare men off is not showing any interest sexually. Not showing any interest sexually. And I talk about this all the time. I guarantee you, if you hear any of my, podcasts for ladies, when it talks about dating guys and you know, having guys interested in you and having a guy to want to be with, I always talk about the lack of interest women show sexually and how that affects the relationships you have with these guys, and, you know, how it doesn't affect it in a positive way. So the thing is that if you don't show any interest sexually in a guy, that's going to scare the guy off for a number of reasons. Sometimes if you're out dating a guy, this is the first, second, third dates or whatever, and you're not showing any interest sexually. And before I even get into this, let me explain what I mean by interest sexually. Sexual interest does not mean you have to have sex with a guy on, you know, as soon as you meet him, or, you know, give him a hand job or whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. Interest sexually means that he can tell, or there's a vibe that you guys are sexually attracted to each other, and that the relationship that you are having with him is progressing sexually. So that means let's say if you're on a first date with a guy, and, you know, he touches your hand, and you keep your hand there, that's showing interest sexually. If you pull your hand away, that is showing that you have no sexual interest. If a guy is pulling you closer to him to sort of like hug him or get him closer to you, and you're kind of pulling away, that's showing no sexual interest. If you are pushing yourself into him, that is showing sexual interest. If a guy wants to kiss you and he tries to go in for the kiss and you pull your face away, that is showing no sexual interest. If you kiss him, that is showing sexual interest. Okay? So when you don't show sexual interest, that's going to scare the guy off, because he is going to interpret that as that meaning you are not into him. Just like when we were talking about earlier, when you don't respond to his calls, if you don't respond to him sexually, he's going to interpret that as you are not into him. Guys interpret you being into them or you liking them by how you respond to them. You understand? And the response has to be progressive. So if the response is not progressive, meaning, you know, like I was saying earlier, if you don't call him, if you do not show that interest sexually, if it's anything besides that, if it's regressing, meaning you're not calling him, or if you're not showing sexual interest, he's going to think you're not into him, and therefore that is going to scare him off, because he's going to say, damn, if he's on a date with you and he tries to kiss you and you do not kiss him, he is going to think you're not into him, and then he's going to say, okay, I need to move on to find another girl who is into me, because maybe this girl's not into me and she was just using me for a free meal. This is how guys think, so I'm just letting you know. Or, you know, if you're not showing any sexual interest, oh, she's just using me for my attention. She's trying to put me in the friend zone. This is what guys are going to think. So this has to do with you also understanding yourself, because you have to be at a point where, you know, I always tell women, don't go out with a guy unless you are sexually attracted to him. But sometimes, you know, women will say, well, I need to get to know a guy a little bit first before I understand how much I'm into him, which is understandable. But sometimes you meet guys who there's just this spark automatically that you're just feeling them, and then it starts from there. So I say deal with those guys first, not just go out with a guy because you're lonely and you're bored and you need something to do, because then that's what happens. You start to end up not showing any sexual interest, and it doesn't go anywhere. Or even worse, you're not showing any sexual interest, at first, and then you end up realizing you actually like this guy because he's actually a cool guy, and then now all of a sudden you want him now, and now he doesn't want you anymore because you weren't showing any sexual interest. So the thing is, you have to show sexual interest when you are dealing with these guys. If you do not show sexual interest, then it's going to scare the guys off. It's going to scare them off. They're going to stop seeing you. They're going to be like, well, I'm not going to bother with this woman because she's not, doing these. She's not like showing me like she likes me. She's just not. You understand? And the thing is, you could like him, and you could be on some like, well, I don't kiss on the first date. And a rule, and this is what I want to tell you, ladies, just to give you a rule of thumb. Let's say if you're on a first date with a guy, right? And you just have this thing where you don't like to kiss people the first time you meet them. That's just what you do, right? Or, that's just how you feel at a certain time or whatever. If that happens, let's say you like the guy, but you don't want to really kiss him now because you just don't feel comfortable. And, that's cool. What needs to happen is let's say you're on a date, guy hugs you, he's going in for the kiss, you move your face, you're like, oh, I don't really. You need to tell him, if you like him, be like, hey, oh, I'm sorry, I'm really into you. I really like you so much, but I just don't feel comfortable kissing someone on the first date. That's just how I am. But next time when we go out, maybe we can, you know what I'm saying? Like, you need to let him know that, because if you do not, he's going to interpret that as you not being into him. Do you understand this? It's very important. So, not showing any sexual interest, any interest sexually, is going to scare men off. So that's number 4. Not showing any interest sexually. Now, number 5. The 5th thing that is going to scare men off is being boring. Being boring. So what does that mean, Mr. Locario? Being boring. So what I coach hundreds of guys, and I hear this thing a lot where the guys will say something to the effect of this. Guys will say, I don't like when I go on a date with a woman and I feel like I need to come up with things to entertain her. She seems bored. She seems like she's not into it. And it makes her seem boring to me. And it's a turnoff to these guys. So if you're on a date and, he's having a conversation with you and you're giving one-word answers and you're being really quiet, you're not really talking as much, you're kind of like, just looking like whatever, that is going to, scare him off. And sometimes some women will do this because they're nervous. They're like, I'm nervous on the day. I'm kind of just like, I'm kind of getting adjusted and whatever. But you have to engage the guys that you're with, or else you're going to come off as boring. And if you come off as boring, that's going to scare them off because they're going to get turned off by that. So, you have to actually make an effort to, show your personality, show who you are, be present in the moment and have these conversations. And also have original thoughts. Now, what does that mean? So what a lot of guys also tell me is that, they'll date a couple of different women, but then they say that the women that they date all sound like the same woman. So basically what that means is that there are a lot of women out there who have the same like ideas about everything, or they attach them, their ideas to cliches or popular opinion. So for example, I remember I was on a date with a girl and I said, what do you think about people having sex on a first date, right? And so she was like, oh, that's disgusting, or that's ridiculous, or whatever. And I remember I asked a whole bunch of other girls that I wasn't even on a date with these girls, but I was just like a little focus group. I'm like, what do you think about people having sex on a first date? And it's like, oh no, that's crazy. You can't do that. You can't do this, whatever. So all these girls are saying this, right? And this can actually be your opinion, like, oh no, this is crazy. I would never do that. That's ridiculous, right? But you have to, if you have to ask yourself, or the guy might ask you, so why do you think it's disgusting? What makes it disgusting? Why is it a wrong thing? Why is it bad? Now, if you have no backup to what that question is about, if you have no backup to why you think it's bad or why you think it's disgusting, if you have nothing logical or nothing that critiques or is a deep thought as to why that is bad, the guy's going to look at you like, this girl is just the same as everybody else. She's just saying what what everybody else is saying. What's different about you? And that's going to make you seem boring because you are just subscribing to what everyone else is saying or thinking. So you have to have your own original thought. So even if you do think it's disgusting or crazy, you have to back it up with why you actually think it, not just because it's disgusting. Like, I just think it's, people need to get to know each other because, I feel like sex this means this to me, and then I need to, share it with someone I have a deep connection with, or something that lets you know that this guy knows like what is on your mind, who are you really, and it makes for good conversation, and it makes you not seem like you're boring. You understand? Because, and this is what I was saying earlier, a lot of this stuff, that I'm saying, is going to be honest stuff that you might not really want to hear or never heard, because guys, they always tell me that there are, and I've experienced this myself, where a lot of times women, and I've said this in other audios, women subscribe to groupthink, and a lot of women don't think for themselves. And then if you don't think for yourself or have your own original thought, you come off as boring and regular. It's just like if you meet a guy and he's coming with like some cheesy pickup line, or he says like, the same thing every other guy says, like, if you're really hot and he comes to you like, hey, beautiful, hey, you're hot, hey, you're hot, you're hot, you're hot, hey, hot, you're hot. It's just like, okay, all these guys are telling me I'm hot. I heard it before, whatever. Guys think the same way. They think, oh, you're boring. Yeah, well, I've had this discussion with all these girls. Y'all say the same stuff. You understand? So you have to, have your own original thought, which will make you seem different, which will make you not boring. You understand that? So I'm going to go through all of the things again. So number 1, again, is having a bad attitude is going to scare men off. Number 2 is not responding to men's calls is going to turn men off. Number 3 is talking about the future with guys that you just met is going to, turn them off. Number 4 is not showing any interest sexually is going to turn them off. And number 5 is being boring is going to turn men off. Now, before you turn off this video, I want you to do 2 quick things. 1, I want you to click the link below and send me your questions. If you have any questions on dating and relationships, I'll make a video about it. And 2, I want you to click the link under that to get my free audio program, 7 highly effective steps for finding and keeping a man. And I'll talk to you guys later. Remember, the truth is inside you. Peace. I'm gone.